Hello everybody, welcome to Yoga Fit, and today we're going to be looking at core. So core is a really important part of our body, as you already probably know, but what's interesting is, what do we know the core is? So if you think of core, what do you think of? Most of us think that it's just kind of the abdominals and the front of the belly, but in fact the core is the whole barrel of your abdomen, really, from your chest down, pelvis up. And the core constitutes a number of different things, of course your organs and whatnot, but functionally for muscles and for core stability, we have the rectus abdominis, which we just mentioned, but we also have the obliques, the transverse abdominals, which are lower down, the lats, which are under here and go to the back and wrap around the ribs, and also the well, we won't mention this where it is, but the diaphragm. And the diaphragm is a really important core muscle, which kind of gets overlooked as a core muscle, but not in yoga. In any case, the diaphragm is a muscle, but it's also an organ. So it's doing a lot of different things in our body. It's a pretty amazing entity in and of itself. It kind of looks like a jellyfish upside down, so it's got this sort of upside down umbrella look to it, with the spinal cord and the polyvagal nerve going right through the middle of it. And that's what innervates it. That's why you can access the diaphragm if you get injured in your quad, and you can still breathe, ideally. If not, you've probably damaged part of that polyvagal nerve, so or gone up into the brainstem. So anyways, the core and the diaphragm are really closely connected, and part of what we'll be doing today is a couple different breathing techniques that really help you to access the diaphragm and to develop it, because it's important for you to develop that to get some core stability. And also, we're going to be looking at the 6 movements of the spine in a moment, and those are also really integral to developing core, because the 6 movements of the spine you can do, you can do them for the whole body, lateral flexion, all that kind of stuff. But the key here is that if you don't have any movement below your neck, you can still do them with your head, and you can also, if you don't even have that movement, you could do them with your tongue. So you can kind of stimulate core muscles all the way up the chain, if you will. So let's take a look at what the tools we'll need for today will be. We'll need a block. Ideally, if you have a block, I have a cover on my yoga block, so underneath here is a yoga block, because we'll be using it later on to slide on the table. That's why I like a cover on it. But for today's workout, we won't need a cover on it. So if you just have a bolster or a rolled up towel, that's fine, and that will be on your lap. If it's firm surface, that's even better. So something like a large, I don't know, even an iPad actually on a bolster or on a towel would be good. The firmer the better. So that'll be later on in the second half. And then we're going to be doing a couple of different breathing techniques in the first half, and that you will need your rolled up towel on your mat or on your lap, which I have on my lap already, and also a strap. Now a strap could be either a scarf tied up or a belt or whatever, and you want to tie it in about the same width as your shoulders. So it's pretty much the same width as my shoulders. And that's about that. So for the breathing, yoga is very much a technique of combining breath, movement, consciousness, intention, and ideally collectivity, or connectivity, which could be collecting up the bandhas. And the bandhas are kind of this ideological part of our body that's kind of like a web that allows things to move up in the body. And that happens in circulation by the way of valves. So valves, are part of how blood moves back up to the heart from the legs. And of course, when you're paralyzed, your valves and your that area, because you're not pumping that blood and working it the same way, we can get low blood pressure and those edema, that type of stuff. However, if you do some of these breathing exercises, you will improve your circulation. And then getting back to this bandha idea, the bandha is a way to kind of close off the energy from moving down or moving up. And those valves are basically the pelvic basin. A lot of women will relate to this if they've had a baby, or maybe even if they want to kind of develop more integrity to that area. And they do that usually doing a Kegel exercise, which is basically kind of tightening the perineal muscles and pulling up. And that action is really important for the core. And so we will think about that action by squeezing kind of the anus and the abdominal, or sorry, the anus and the perineal region, and just squeezing and then releasing, and then squeezing and releasing. And that's called in yoga a bandha. And I will be cueing you to do a bandha here and there throughout the practice today. In addition, I'm going to be cueing you to do these 6 movements of the spine. So let's take a look at those. So flexion is when we're rounding the spine on the back body. Extension is when we're extending the body in the front and compressing it at the back. Lateral extension on my right side is taking the body over to the right, so I wouldn't come forward here. I'm going to be right over my spine, and then I would be going over to the left in a lateral. And ideally that hand and that arm are right over the spine, not forward. So that would be lateral extension and lateral flexion. And then we have then twisting the spine, so taking the body and rotating it. Now, Megan and I have lots of things we agree on, and one of them is alignment and integrity of movement. And why we learn the 6 movements of the spine, and why I go over this with you over and over, is because when you have integrity in the movement, you have a better result. And even, this has actually been researched and even proven, even if your intention is 100% there, and you really, really, really visualize and imagine the movement, the whole movement, that actually stimulates the body and gives you just as good a workout if you did the whole movement. So keep in mind that you can visualize these movements and you can do them to the full extent in your mind, and experience the movement in a more micro movement in your body. So I will always give adaptations, but if I don't, then you can kind of go, okay, what would be the smallest part of that movement that she's getting at, and what part of the spine or what movement is it? Flexion, extension, lateral twisting, or spinal twist. So those 6 movements we'll be looking at and doing kind of in various different ways throughout the practice. So the first breath I'm going to teach you today is called the Ujjayi Breath. Ujjayi. And Ujjayi in the language of yoga, which is Sanskrit, means victorious or exalted. And the reason they call it that is twofold, really, is because it gives you a really good feeling when you have, I think, a grounded and a very empowered breath. And secondly, it develops the nervous system stability. So it actually helps the nervous system to move out of fight or flight and into a more responsive parasympathetic mode. So you can do it, while you're practicing, of course, but you could also do it when you're going to sleep at night to help you kind of reset and come down to a nice quiet rhythm with your breath. The best way to think about the Ujjayi breath is that it's a circulation of your breath at the back of your throat. And to do that, you kind of want to be like a frog and make your throat a bit constricted and get the agadhas kind of activated so that you can draw the breath like almost through a straw to the back of the throat. The way we learn this breath, ideally, and sort of event initially is to do it thinking that you're going to be fogging up your bathroom mirror, and you would have your mouth open to do that, and you would go like this. So let's all try that. And as you're doing that, I'm sure you can feel there's a bit of a swirl as you go and make a sound. So you want to kind of keep that sound and you want to keep that swirl, but you want to ideally close your mouth. So yoga, usually our mouth is closed when we're breathing, unless it's a different breathing technique. So when we do that with the mouth closed, you may find it easier to do it halfway through to start off with. So go like this. Again. One more time. That's the Ujjayi breath. So as best you can, practice that breath. And always when you're doing breathing work and focused breathing work, you want to remember not to strain and to just go at your own pace. The next breath I'm going to be teaching you is the fire breath. And the fire breath is also called the Kabbalah Bhakti breath. And this means the breath of fire, the breath of life, really. So essentially the Kabbalah Bhakti breath is a cleansing breath, and it also kind of categorizes as an energizing breath and a sort of a stimulating breath. So to do the Kabbalah Bhakti breath, the best thing to think of is that you're dribbling a ball and a basketball, say, and it's coming back to you. And the ball is like your breath. So you're going to be focusing predominantly on the exhale in this Kabbalah Bhakti breath and letting the inhale kind of rebound like the ball does off the floor back to you. So don't focus on the inhale, focus mostly on the exhale. And the idea is to get the exhale short, sharp, and quick in this process. And so I will do a demonstration. So what I do is I like to come, and by the way, I also, in addition to the strap that I have around my lap that I'm going to use for yoga, I have a strap around my legs because I like to keep my legs, my femurs from rotating outward, especially when we do this kind of stuff. So I'm going to come forward, hands just on the seat beside the knees. And I'm going to lift the heart and bring the spine into the body. Do a couple Ujjayi breaths just to get yourself deepened and connected and centered. And then Kabbalah Bhakti. Okay, so you can see there's a bit of a pumping action, like a bouncing of a ball. I'm not forcing it, I'm not straining. You may notice that my face is a little bit puckered. And I'm really letting that breath kind of come and go, inhale, exhale, in a forced way, but not forced in a negative way, not violently, but just really working it. So let's try that together. So come forward, away from the back of your chair. Bring yourself into a kind of lifted heart, broadened collarbones. Draw the shoulder blades down the back. And good. Just try a couple to start off with. I can go up to 50 or so of these now, but it took me a long time to work up to that. So it'll take you a while to get the diaphragm in shape for that. So again, we come forward, lift the heart, drop the shoulder blades down the spine, broaden the collarbones, and good, good, and then relax. So those are the three breaths actually the third breath is called the puffer breath. Now this breath is actually a breath that I've borrowed from Emily Conrad, who was the founder and the originator of the Continuum movement, which is a great thing to look at if you're interested in movement and sound. Anyways, she combines breath, movement, and sound. And this breath, she didn't call it the puffer breath. I do, because I'm kind of puffing my way back up. So I'm using again the diaphragm. It's very similar to Kabbalah Bhakti breath, except that it's not through the nose. So that's really important distinction. And it's through the mouth. And the way this one goes is kind of similar. You're going to maybe come forward and extend into the spine a little bit and feel that kind of broadening of the shoulders and lifting of the heart. Then you're going to again kind of pucker your lips, and you're going to go so I'm breathing in and out through my mouth. It's not ideal in terms of the nervous system because it's very stimulating, but where you'll use that breath, and if you want to use that breath, you could use it sort of when we do other workout things like coming up from a push-up. So I'm not really using my hands to do that. It's really the breath. So that's the diaphragm doing that work right there. Okay, so those are the 3 breaths, the 6 movements of the spine.